In Indonesia, sometimes you get a call from the president. The last big one came from Suharto. And the next one? From President Prabowo. It's March 1990. At President Suharto's private ranch, Tapos, in Bogor, 31 of Indonesia's most powerful tycoons are gathered. Lim Suliong, the founder of the Salim Group, is there. He's the businessman closest to Suharto's inner circle. And next to him is Prayogo Pangestu, who later became the richest man in the country. The cameras are rolling, and the nation is watching. The tycoons sitting there were all Chinese Indonesians running family-owned companies. And this was a group that was already seen as essential to the economy, but also a symbol of inequality because many of the so-called indigenous Indonesians, or pribumi, felt left out of the wealth that these companies controlled. Suharto wanted these tycoons to share portions of their companies with cooperatives. These are small state-backed groups that support small business, provide loans, and affordable goods to local communities. The idea that was floated was that the tycoons should provide up to 25% of their company shares to these cooperatives to help balance wealth. And on TV, the message was the biggest companies have grown, and now it was their turn to help others grow too. But once the cameras were off, that 25% idea, it dropped to just 1%. Cooperatives didn't have the money or skills to manage the shares, and the tycoons were also quietly pushing back on giving up shares of their companies. The Tapos meeting looked like a plan to share wealth, but it ended up looking more like a public display of loyalty to Suharto, and nothing changed. The tycoons stayed rich, the public stayed out, and the system stayed the same. Now, 35 years later, Suharto's former son-in-law is president, and he's making his own call to the tycoons. President Prabowo didn't invite them to his ranch, but he did call on them again for support. He needs funding to pay for his massive programs like free lunches, subsidized housing, defense upgrades, and to help pay off the previous government's debt. So he asked them to buy something exclusive: Patriot bonds. Now, these aren't regular government bonds. You can't buy them in a bank. They're only offered privately to Indonesia's wealthiest business families. The government gets money now to help fund national plans, and the bond buyers get paid back later at about 2% interest a year. And that's low, since normal Indonesian government bonds pay around 6% or so. So no one is buying Patriot bonds for a profit. They're buying them because the president asked, and saying no isn't a good idea. Reports say that Patriot bonds have already raised about $3 billion in commitments from major tycoons. And what's super fascinating is that some of the same families are back. Many of the same dynasties are being called upon once again, but this time to buy bonds instead of giving shares. The Financial Times called it a way for the rich to show that they're on the same side as the state. So, different presidents, but similar playbooks. Suharto framed Tapos as a way to spread wealth and to remind the tycoons who held power. Prabowo is using the Patriot bonds to ask tycoons for help to fund his big programs and to signal that power has shifted in a post-Jokowi world. But some economists worry that this keeps Indonesia leaning on the same few families at the top. And unless benefits finally reach beyond them, the country will keep relying on the same group every time the president calls.